Don't marry. She hid Dad, so you wouldn't see. The sharp, repetitive cry tore through the solemn silence of the church. At the exact moment millionaire Arthur was about to say, "I do." His eyes, previously filled with blind love for his stunning bride, froze in terror as he saw the parrot, which he thought was at home, perched on the altar, repeating words it had secretly overheard. A chilling shiver ran down the spines of all the guests as the bird, with its feathers ruffled, flapped frantically, about to unravel a web of lies and cruelty that would change Arthur's life forever. The sumptuous hall, adorned with rare flowers and fine silks, seemed to have been struck by a bolt of deafening silence. Each guest, previously immersed in the contagious joy of that long-awaited day, now held their breath, eyes wide, fixed on the emerald parrot that swayed agitatedly on the altar. Arthur, the magnate who always controlled every situation with enviable calm, felt his blood run cold in his veins. His mind, a whirlwind of thoughts, tried to process the absurd words that echoed, "Don't marry. She hid Dad. So you wouldn't see." Veronica, beside him, looked like a marble statue, her stunning face now pale, her thin lips slightly pursed. A forced, almost imperceptible smile tried to form but failed miserably. She extended her hand, as if to wave the bird away, but recoiled, noticing the curious glances turning towards her. The priest, in his impeccable cassock, cleared his throat. Visibly uncomfortable, unsure how to resume the ceremony, Arthur turned to Veronica, his blue eyes, once so full of adoration, now laden with painful confusion. "Veronica, what is this?" he whispered, his voice hoarse, almost inaudible amidst the tense silence. He clearly remembered leaving Loro, his pet parrot and confidant of many years, at the mansion under the care of one of the maids. How had he gotten here? And more importantly, what did those words mean? His father, the venerable Mr. Eduardo, was ill, isolated in the east wing of the mansion, receiving special care, as Veronica had explained, a serious illness that required absolute rest and restricted visits. Loro, as if sensing Arthur's doubt, flapped his wings again, flying a short distance to land on the edge of the pulpit closer to the groom. "Dad, not sick. Dad, alone. Veronica, bad." The words, spoken with the clarity of a child but with the urgency of a desperate messenger, hit Arthur like a blow. He felt a knot in his throat, a dizzying sensation. Memories of his father, a strong and loving man always present, contrasted violently with the image of fragility Veronica painted. The guests began to murmur, whispers growing like a tide. Mrs. Sophia, a long-time family friend, covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes welling up with concern. She had always had her reservations about Veronica, sensing a coldness behind so much beauty, but she never imagined anything like this. Mr. Almeida, Arthur's business partner, frowned, observing the scene with an uncharacteristic seriousness. Arthur's reputation, built over years of integrity, was now under everyone's scrutiny. Veronica, regaining some composure, stepped forward, a tense smile adorning her lips. "Arthur, my love, this is absurd. Laura must have overheard some nonsense from a gossiping maid. You know how birds repeat everything without understanding. Your father is being very well cared for, exactly as the doctors recommended. He needs peace and quiet to recover." Her voice was soft, but Arthur noticed an almost imperceptible tremor in her hands. But Loro did not fall silent. "Dad, hungry. Dad, thirsty. Veronica, won't let anyone see." The parrot, head tilted, looked directly at Arthur, as if pleading for his attention, for his understanding. With each word from the bird, Veronica's mask seemed to crack a little more. Arthur felt a chill run through his body. A dark intuition he had ignored for so long now screamed in his soul. The image of his father, alone and suffering, began to form in his mind, crushing the happiness he thought he had found. The parrot's voice was not just a cry. It was a desperate plea, a revelation that threatened to collapse the perfect world he had built. He had to know the truth. Arthur felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. Laura's words, "Dad, hungry, Dad, thirsty, Veronica, won't let anyone see," echoed in his mind, piercing the facade of tranquility. His eyes, previously fixed on the parrot, now turned to Veronica, seeking an explanation. The pain of doubt was excruciating. He observed the tremor in her hands, the forced smile. A dark puzzle piece began to fall into place. Veronica, noticing Arthur's gaze, stepped forward, her voice taking on a tone of soft reprimand, yet with irritation. "Arthur, please, don't listen to a mere bird. Lauro is adorable, but he repeats what he hears without discernment. I'm sure some unsuspecting staff member spread rumors. Your father is receiving the best treatment with dedicated nurses and correct medication. The doctors were clear. He needs absolute rest and zero stress. It's for his own good, my love." She tried to take Arthur's hand, but he pulled it away. "Absolute rest, Veronica, and why can't I see him? Why are visits so restricted, even for me, his son?" Arthur's voice, though low, carried a force that made Veronica recoil. The hall, previously noisy, was now almost completely silent, with eyes fixed on the couple. Mrs. Sophia, with a heavy heart, exchanged a meaningful glance with Mr. Almeida. Veronica's mask was slipping, revealing a tension she could no longer hide. Lauro, as if understanding the impasse, flew from the pulpit to Arthur's shoulder, his small claws gripping the fabric of his suit. "Dad! Cries! Veronica! Fights! Doesn't give food!" The words, spoken with shocking clarity, were a final blow. The image of his father, Mr. Eduardo, his safe harbor, crying from hunger and thirst, mistreated, was unbearable. Arthur felt a wave of fury and despair. The blindness that had dominated him dissipated, revealing the naked truth. "Enough, Veronica. This cannot continue." Arthur carefully removed Lauro from his shoulder and handed him to Mrs. Sophia, who received him with tenderness. "I need to go to my father now." He turned to the priest, his blue eyes now hardened by determination. "Father, I apologize, but this ceremony is suspended. I cannot marry while my father is suffering." Arthur's clear and firm declaration resonated through the hall, shocking everyone. Veronica paled even further, her face contorted in a mixture of rage and panic. "Arthur, you can't do this. It's our wedding day. Are you going to ruin everything because of a bird and unfounded rumors?" Her voice, once soft, was now shrill, revealing the fury that boiled within her. She tried to grab his arm, but Arthur disengaged with cold delicacy. "The truth is not a rumor, Veronica, and my family's happiness is worth more than any ceremony." He turned, walking briskly down the central aisle, his gaze fixed on the church door. Each step was heavy, laden with guilt and the urgency to rescue his father. Lauro, in Mrs. Sophia's lap, chirped softly, a call to action. The luxurious hall, once the stage for a perfect love, was now the setting for a painful betrayal and an urgent awakening. Arthur needed to confront the darkness Veronica hid and bring his father back into the light. The journey to truth had only just begun. Arthur didn't look back. His steps echoed in the church aisle, each one laden with an overwhelming mixture of guilt, fury, and desperate urgency. The image of his father, Mr. Eduardo, alone, hungry and thirsty as Lauro had revealed, burned in his mind, erasing any trace of the love he had felt for Veronica. The luxury of the wedding, the flowers, the music, everything became an unreal backdrop, a veil covering a cruel truth. He felt the weight of the guests' stares, but his sole priority was his father. Mrs. Sophia, with Lauro nestled in her arms, hurried to follow him, her eyes welling up with compassion. "Arthur, wait! I'm coming with you!" she called, her voice choked. Mr. Almeida, with a grave expression, also stood up, indicating he would accompany him. Veronica, at the altar, watched the scene with a contorted face. Her beauty, once so captivating, now seemed an empty mask, revealing the fury and panic that consumed her. "Arthur, don't be ridiculous. You're making a scene because of a bird. Come back here," she screamed, but her voice was lost in the growing murmur. Arthur barely heard. He left the church and ran to the waiting car, a private driver already ready to take him. "To the mansion, as fast as possible, to the East Wing," he ordered, his voice tense. Mrs. Sophia and Mr. Almeida got into the car right after, his friend holding Lauro carefully. The Parrot, sensing the tension, was quiet, merely observing Arthur with his intelligent eyes. During the drive, Arthur felt his heart pound in his chest. Every minute felt like an eternity. He reproached himself for having been so blind, for having blindly trusted Veronica, for not having questioned the restrictions on his father's visits more. His father, a man who had always been his safe harbor, his mentor, was now suffering due to his negligence. A sharp pain pierced his soul. Upon arriving at the mansion, Arthur leaped from the car before it had even fully stopped. He ran through the sumptuous corridors, ignoring the luxury that once pleased him so much, now a bitter reminder of his superficiality. The East Wing, once a place of rest and privacy, now seemed like a dungeon in his mind. He pushed the door, which was locked, with a force he didn't know he possessed, breaking it open. The room was dark, heavy curtains blocking the sunlight. A stuffy, musty smell hung in the air. On the bed, Mr. Eduardo lay, pale and visibly thinner than Arthur remembered. His eyes were closed and his breathing was weak. Beside the bed, an empty glass of water and an untouched plate. No nurse, no maid. Only the oppressive silence and the cruel evidence of neglect. Arthur fell to his knees beside the bed, feeling a knot in his throat that prevented him from breathing. "Father, my father," he whispered, his voice choked with pain and remorse. He held Mr. Eduardo's cold, wrinkled hand, feeling tears roll down his face. Mrs. Sophia and Mr. Almeida entered the room, their faces shocked and saddened. Lauro, on Mrs. Sophia's shoulder, chirped softly, a sad melody. Mr. Eduardo slowly opened his eyes, blinking as if trying to focus. A weak, almost imperceptible smile appeared on his lips when he saw Arthur. "My son," he murmured, his voice hoarse and weak. Arthur felt his heart break. He had failed his father, but now, with the truth revealed, he would do everything to right his wrong. Veronica's darkness had been unmasked, and the light of justice would begin to shine. Arthur felt an electric shock upon hearing his father's weak voice. "My son!" A lament that tore at his heart. He squeezed Mr. Eduardo's hand, tears streaming. "Father, I'm so sorry. Forgive me. I'm here. You're going to be okay." His choked voice carried an unwavering promise. Mrs. Sophia, with Lauro in her arms, approached the bed, her face pale. "Eduardo, my dear friend," she murmured, trembling. Mr. Almeida was already calling the best doctors in the city. The room, once a scene of neglect, now filled with care and love. Arthur stood up, wiping away his tears, and took action. "Mrs. Sophia, please bring fresh water and something light for him to eat. Call the trusted maids. We need help." His emotional voice had the tone of a leader. Lauro, on Mrs. Sophia's shoulder, chirped softly, approvingly. While they waited for the doctors, Arthur sat beside his father, holding his hand. He observed every detail: dust, withered flowers, lack of medication. Rage bubbled within him, controlled, directed at Veronica's injustice. How could he have been so blind? Passion had clouded his judgment. He felt shame, but also a new clarity. Mr. Eduardo, with effort, tried to speak. "Veronica, she didn't want me to tell." His voice, almost inaudible, was a blow. The confirmation of Veronica's malice coming from his father's lips solidified his determination. It wasn't just neglect, it was a calculated plot to silence him. The doctors arrived in minutes, brought by Mr. Almeida. Renowned professionals, family friends, they knew Mr. Eduardo, their faces contorted in shock and sadness. Immediately they examined the patriarch while Arthur explained the situation, his voice firm, his pain evident. Mrs. Sophia brought water and light soup. Arthur helped his father drink, spoon by spoon. Each sip was a step towards recovery, each grateful look from Mr. Eduardo a balm. Laura watched everything from Mrs. Sophia's shoulder, attentive eyes, a silent guardian. News of the wedding's suspension and Mr. Eduardo's condition was already spreading through the mansion. The maids, previously fearful of Veronica, were now relieved and ready to help. Arthur knew the battle against Veronica would be arduous, but he was ready. His father's health was the priority. He looked at Mr. Eduardo, now more comfortable. True wealth, he realized, was not in fortune or Veronica's superficial brilliance, but in the unbreakable bonds of family, the loyalty of a parrot, and the compassion of friends. That room, once a symbol of abandonment, was the epicenter of a rebirth, of justice and rediscovered family love. Arthur felt that, for the first time, he was on the right path. Arthur remained by his father's bedside, Mr. Eduardo's hand still in his, a silent promise of care and reparation. The doctors, with serious and concerned expressions, discussed in low voices, their gazes alternating between the debilitated patriarch and Arthur, who absorbed every detail with a heavy heart. Dr. Mendez, a longtime family friend and respected clinician, approached Arthur, placing a hand on his shoulder in a gesture of support. "Arthur, your father is very weak, dehydrated and malnourished, in a worrying state of vulnerability. It's severe neglect. We'll need to admit him immediately for intensive monitoring and careful recovery." The doctor's words fell like stones on Arthur's heart, confirming the extent of Veronica's cruelty and the depth of his own blindness. Mrs. Sophia, with Laura nestled in her arms, offered Arthur a glass of water, which he accepted with an almost imperceptible nod, his eyes moist. Mr. Almeida, with his usual promptness, was already on the phone, coordinating the ambulance and preparations for admission to one of the city's best hospitals. The efficiency and affection of his friends were a balm for Arthur's wounded soul, a reminder that he was not alone. Laura, with his bright, attentive eyes, seemed to understand every word, every gesture, a silent confidant of the pain and hope that was beginning to emerge. As the medical team, with delicacy and professionalism, prepared Mr. Eduardo for transport, Arthur sat down again beside his father, holding his hand firmly. "Father, you're going to the hospital now. The best doctors will take care of you with all their heart. I won't leave your side. Never again, I promise." Mr. Eduardo slowly opened his eyes, a glimmer of gratitude and relief filling them. He tried to smile, a weak gesture, but one that, for Arthur at that moment, was worth more than all the gold and riches in the world. The ambulance arrived quickly, and with all care and respect, Mr. Eduardo was taken out of the mansion towards a new chance at life. Arthur accompanied him, feeling an overwhelming mix of relief at finally being able to care for his father and a growing, contained fury against Veronica. Mrs. Sophia and Mr. Almeida followed in Arthur's car. Laura nestled in his friend's lap, chirping softly, like a lament mixed with hope. At the hospital, Mr. Eduardo was promptly attended to by a dedicated team. Arthur did not leave the waiting room, anxiety gnawing at him with each passing minute. Mrs. Sophia tried to calm him, offering him tea and words of comfort. "Arthur, you did the right thing. That bird was an angel, a blessing. Imagine what else Veronica could have done if Laura hadn't acted." Her words echoed Arthur's own guilt, but also served as a reminder of Laura's invaluable courage. Mr. Almeida, with his usual shrewdness and practical sense, addressed the legal matter. "Arthur, we need to act firmly. This is a serious crime, neglect, mistreatment, and possibly false imprisonment. Veronica needs to answer for this before the law." Arthur nodded, his eyes fixed on a distant point, his jaw clenched. "She will answer, Almeida. For every day of my father's suffering, for every lie that blinded me. But first, my father. He is our absolute priority now." Hours of agony passed. Finally, Dr. Mendez came with news, his face showing relieved exhaustion. "Your father is stable. Arthur, very weak but stable. We managed to reverse the severe dehydration. Recovery will be long and require patience, but with proper care, he has good chances of recovering. The team is doing everything possible and impossible." A deep sigh of relief escaped Arthur's lips. He felt an unimaginable weight lifted from his shoulders, hope blossoming in his chest, a faint light after the darkness. He was allowed to see his father for a few minutes. Mr. Eduardo was sleeping deeply, connected to machines monitoring his vital signs, but with a more serene, less tense expression. Arthur held his hand again, silently promising that justice would be done and that he would never again allow anyone to hurt his father. Lauro, whom Mrs. Sophia had brought in a small cage, watched from the corner of the room, a faithful and silent guardian, witness to the pain and the promise. Upon leaving the room, Arthur felt a renewed determination, a strength he didn't know he possessed. The pain of betrayal was still there, an open wound, but the unwavering priority of caring for his father and seeking justice propelled him forward. He looked at Mrs. Sophia and Mr. Almeida, his true friends and pillars of support. "Let's go home. We have much to do, and we will do it together." Arthur's voice was firm, laden with new strength and clarity. The journey to restore his family's honor and punish Veronica's cruelty was just beginning, and he was ready to face it with the support of those who truly cared. The darkness had been exposed, and now the light of truth and justice would begin to illuminate the path, step by step. Arthur, Mrs. Sophia, and Mr. Almeida returned to the mansion, the car's silence heavy with the gravity of the events. Lauro, still in Mrs. Sophia's lap, seemed to sense the tension. His eyes fixed on Arthur. The grand residence, once a symbol of his successful life, now seemed like a stage where a cruel farce had been enacted. As they entered, the atmosphere was palpable. The maids, who had previously walked with apprehension, now looked at Arthur with a mixture of relief and compassion. Their whispers ceased upon seeing him, but their gazes spoke volumes. Arthur felt a wave of shame for his blindness, but also an iron determination. "Where is Veronica?" Arthur asked, his voice low, but laden with an authority he hadn't used in a long time. One of the oldest maids, Maria, stepped forward, her hands clasped. "Mr. Arthur, Mrs. Veronica is in the main hall. She is very agitated." Arthur nodded, a knot in his stomach. He knew the confrontation would be painful but necessary. Upon entering the hall, the scene was pure chaos. Veronica stood in the center of the room, her hair disheveled and her wedding dress crumpled, holding an empty crystal goblet. Her eyes, once so seductive, now gleamed with uncontrolled fury. She appeared to have been drinking, and her smudged makeup accentuated her expression of despair and rage. "So, the great Arthur finally deigns to appear," she screamed, her voice hoarse, pointing at him with the goblet. "You ruined everything, because of a stupid bird and old gossips. How could you believe an animal and unfounded rumors instead of me, your fiancé?" Mrs. Sophia and Mr. Almeida entered right behind Arthur. Lauro on Mrs. Sophia's shoulder chirped loudly, as if responding to the accusation. "Veronica, bad! Dad cries!" Veronica laughed, a shrill, joyless sound. "Ah, the parrot! The great informant. Do you think this animal knows what it's saying? It just repeats what it hears. That grumpy old man, your father, was always a burden, Arthur. I was just trying to protect you from the stress of caring for him." She gestured wildly, almost dropping the goblet. Arthur felt a chill. The coldness of her words, the complete lack of remorse, was shocking. protect me. Or protect your ambition, Veronica. My father was dehydrated, malnourished. He was dying because of your negligence." Arthur's voice, though controlled, trembled with indignation. It was then that Veronica, with a distorted smile, delivered her cruelest blow. "Dying? Oh, Arthur, your father was always a frail man. And Lauro? Do you really think he's a hero? That bird? He's proof of your own madness. Who would believe a parrot would reveal the truth? That's ridiculous. I was just following the doctor's orders, who said he needed absolute rest. You're being manipulated, Arthur, by a bird and by people who want to separate us." She tried to approach, her eyes moist, feigning a desperation that didn't reach Arthur. "Don't you see I'm the only one who truly cares about you, who loves you?" Arthur recoiled, repulsion evident on his face. That was the unexpected turning point. Veronica was not remorseful. She was trying to turn the situation around, discredit Lauro and herself, manipulating the perception of reality. "Enough, Veronica," Arthur declared, his voice resonating through the hall. "Your charade is over. My father is in the hospital fighting for his life because of you. And Lauro, yes, Lauro is a hero. He was the only voice of truth when I was blind. You don't love me, you love my fortune. And for that, you will answer. Not for rumors, but for facts. And justice will be done." He turned to Mr. Almeida. "Almeida, please call the police and my lawyers. Veronica cannot leave this mansion and have all her belongings packed. She is no longer part of this family." Arthur's decision was firm, unshakable. Veronica's face contorted in a mixture of fury and genuine panic, realizing her manipulation had failed. The mask had completely fallen, revealing the darkness Arthur finally saw with clarity. The battle for justice had truly begun. Arthur's declaration resonated like thunder in the hall, silencing Veronica's fury for an instant. Her eyes, previously filled with rage, now widened in genuine panic. She staggered, the empty goblet falling from her hands and shattering on the marble with a dry sound, breaking the spell of her desperation. "No, Arthur, you can't do this. You're being ridiculous. It's a mistake. I love you." "I swear," she pleaded, her voice failing, trying to approach. But Arthur stepped back, repulsion evident in every fiber of his being. Mr. Almeida, without wasting time, was already on the phone, his calm and firm voice contrasting with the chaos of the hall. "Yes, I need a patrol car at Valois Mansion immediately, and please contact Dr. Costa and Dr. Regina. It's a matter of legal urgency." He hung up, his eyes meeting Arthur's in a gesture of silent support. Mrs. Sophia hugged Lauro in her arms, the parrot observing the scene with an almost human intelligence, as if understanding the gravity of the moment. Veronica, realizing her pleas were useless, turned to the maids, who were observing everything with serious expressions. You can't allow this. I'm the lady of this house. Arthur is crazy. He's being manipulated." Her voice was hysterical, but no one moved. Their loyalty, long shaken by Veronica's cruelty, now turned to Arthur, the true heir to Mr. Eduardo's kindness. Arthur felt his heart tighten, not for Veronica, but for the pain of betrayal and the guilt of his blindness. The image of his frail father in the hospital was a constant reminder of what was at stake. He needed to be strong, not only for his father, but for himself and for the values he had forgotten. "Veronica, it's over. Your lies no longer hold power here. You chose your path, and now you will have to face the consequences." His voice was low, but laden with an unshakable authority. In a few minutes, the sound of sirens broke the night silence, and 2 police officers, accompanied by Arthur's lawyers, entered the hall. The presence of the authorities brought a cold and relentless formality to the scene. Veronica paled even further, panic transforming into icy terror. Dr. Costa, the family's longtime lawyer, approached Arthur. "Mr. Valois, we are here for whatever you need. The accusations are serious, and we have witnesses." He looked at Lauro, who chirped softly as if confirming. Mrs. Veronica will be notified and escorted off the property. All her possessions will be catalogued and sent to a secure location under legal supervision. Veronica tried to resist, her eyes flashing. "You can't do this! I'm Arthur's fiancée! I have rights!" But the firmness of the police officers and the coldness of the lawyers left no room for argument. She was gently but determinedly escorted out of the hall, her protests becoming mere murmurs of despair. The luxurious wedding dress, once a symbol of her triumph, was now a cloak of her defeat. Arthur watched the scene, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. The darkness that hung over his home was being dispelled. He looked at Mrs. Sophia, who offered him an encouraging smile, and at Mr. Almeida, whose gaze expressed pride. Lauro, on Mrs. Sophia's shoulder, flew to Arthur's shoulder, rubbing his head against his cheek. "Dad, happy, Lauro, good." The parrot's simple, pure words touched Arthur's heart. He had recovered his father, his family, his friends, and most importantly, his own moral compass. True wealth was not fortune, but loyalty, love, and justice. The journey to recovery and rebuilding was just beginning, but Arthur knew that, with those by his side, he was ready for any challenge. The silence that fell over the hall after Veronica's departure was almost as deafening as her furious screams. Arthur felt a strange emptiness, a mixture of relief and a deep sadness for the shattered illusion. The goblet shattered on the marble was a cruel reminder of the fragility of everything he had built on lies. He looked at Mrs. Sophia and Mr. Almeida, their faces marked by exhaustion, but also by a resolute quietness. Lauro, still on his shoulder, nestled in, a small, comforting weight. I don't know what to say," Arthur murmured, his voice hoarse, running a hand through his hair. "Everything seems unreal. How could I have been so blind?" Mrs. Sophia approached, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Arthur, my dear, passion has the power to blind even the wisest. The important thing is that you saw the truth before it was too late and you had the courage to act." Her eyes, full of compassion, were a balm for Arthur's wounded soul. Mr. Almeida, with his usual practicality, cleared his throat. "Now, Arthur, we need to focus on Mr. Eduardo. I've already called the hospital. Dr. Mendez said your father had a peaceful night, but he's still very weak. Recovery will be long, but he's receiving the best care." A heavy sigh escaped Arthur's lips. The image of his pale and frail father was an open wound in his heart. "I need to see him. I need to make sure he's okay." "Of course, my son," Mrs. Sophia said, squeezing his hand. "But first, we need to organize a few things here. The house needs to be cleansed of this shadow, and the lawyers need all the details for the case against Veronica." Arthur nodded, feeling the responsibility weigh on his shoulders, but also a new strength. He looked at Lauro, who chirped softly, as if encouraging him. "Yes, everything will be done. There will be no more neglect, no more lies. My father deserves all the peace and care in the world, and Veronica, she will face the consequences of her actions." He turned to Mr. Almeida. "Almeida, please organize a team to do a deep clean of the East Wing. I want every trace of that cruelty removed, and have the lawyers start gathering all the evidence. The maids, Lauro, everyone is an important witness." Mr. Almeida noted everything seriously, his eyes conveying confidence. "Leave it to me, Arthur. I will personally take care of everything. Justice will be done." While Mrs. Sophia prepared a calming tea, Arthur sat on the sofa, the weight of the past few days catching up to him. He felt a deep shame for his naivety, for having allowed Veronica's superficial brilliance to blind him to the genuine kindness and loyalty that had always surrounded him. But at the same time, he felt a refreshing clarity. True wealth was not in possessions, but in the unbreakable bonds of family, sincere friendship, and the courage of a small bird. Lauro, sensing Arthur's quietness, flew from his shoulder to his lap, nestling there. Dad. Love. Lauro. Family. The parrot's simple words were a balm, a pure and innocent reminder of everything that mattered. Arthur stroked Lauro's soft feathers, feeling a wave of gratitude. He had lost much, but he had recovered something infinitely more valuable, himself and the promise of a future built on truth and love. The journey would be long, but he was not alone. That moment of pure emotion, the unbreakable connection with his father, was the true wealth he had neglected. He promised himself that he would never again stray from what truly mattered. Mr. Eduardo's recovery would be his utmost priority. He would spend every free minute by his father's side, reading to him, talking, bringing back the joy Veronica had stolen. Justice for Veronica would be a necessary step, but restoring his father's health and happiness was the true purpose. He looked at Mr. Eduardo, who now slept serenely, and felt a profound peace. The journey would be long, yes, but he was not alone, and the love they shared was the light that would guide every step. Arthur, with a lighter heart, yet still burdened by a silent pain, left his father's hospital room. The sight of Mr. Eduardo sleeping, though frail, brought immense relief. Mrs. Sophia and Mr. Almeida awaited him in the waiting room, Lauro nestled in his friend's lap, his curious eyes fixed on Arthur. Seeing him, Mrs. Sophia stood, a gentle smile on her lips. "How is he, my dear?" Arthur sighed, deep weariness marking his face, but there was a new determination in his gaze. "Stable, thank God. Dr. Mendez said the night was peaceful, but recovery will be a long and delicate path. I want him to have the best of everything, Mrs. Sophia. The best nurses, the best treatments, everything we can do." He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes fixed on a distant point. "And I will be there, every day, every hour I can." Mr. Almeida nodded, understanding the depth of Arthur's commitment. "That's right, my friend. And while you care for Mr. Eduardo, the lawyers and I will take care of the rest. The case against Veronica is already underway. The evidence is compelling, and the witnesses, including the maids and, of course, Lauro, are irrefutable." Lauro, as if understanding his name, chirped softly, nodding his head. "Veronica. Bad. Dad. Happy." The parrot's words, though simple, reinforced the truth and the need for justice. Arthur felt a tightening in his chest upon hearing Lauro's words, a vivid reminder of the cruelty his father had endured. "I want her to have no way to escape, Almeida. I want her to face the consequences of every act, every lie." His voice was firm, devoid of anger, but full of unshakable conviction. In the days that followed, Arthur divided his time between the mansion and the hospital. At the residence, Veronica's presence was a bitter memory, being actively erased. The East Wing, where his father had been kept, underwent a complete renovation, transforming into a space of light and comfort, ready to welcome him back. Mrs. Sophia lovingly supervised the details, choosing light colors and cozy furniture, while Mr. Almeida managed the intricate legal web, ensuring Veronica had no loopholes. Lauro, always present, accompanied Mrs. Sophia, offering his timely comments that sometimes brought a smile to Arthur's tired lips. "House, clean, Veronica, gone." At the hospital, Arthur was a constant presence. He read to his father, told childhood stories, spoke about plans for the future, even knowing that Mr. Eduardo could not yet respond. He held his hand, feeling the fragility of the skin, but also the strength of the bond that united them. The nurses and doctors noticed Arthur's dedication, and this was reflected in the extra care they gave Mr. Eduardo. Small progress was celebrated as great victories, a slight movement of the fingers, a more conscious blink, a deeper sigh. With each sign of improvement, Arthur's hope was renewed and his guilt diminished, replaced by a sense of purpose. One day, as Arthur read one of his father's favorite books, Mr. Eduardo opened his eyes and with visible effort squeezed Arthur's hand. A weak but genuine smile lit up his face. "My son," he whispered, his voice almost inaudible. Tears streamed down Arthur's face. It was the first time his father had spoken since the rescue. He leaned in, kissing Mr. Eduardo's forehead. "I'm here, Father. Always here." That moment, so simple and profound, was confirmation that love and dedication were healing not only the body, but also the soul. It was proof that true wealth, the kind Veronica could never steal, was there in that touch, that word, in the promise of a future of care and affection. The healing journey was just beginning. But Arthur felt that the path was clear, paved by truth and unconditional love. Arthur remained by his father's side, holding his hand, the tears of relief still warm on his face. That whisper, "My son," was the sweetest melody he could have heard. In the days that followed, Mr. Eduardo's improvement, though slow, was constant and miraculous. Each morning, Arthur rushed to the hospital, eager to see his father's eyes open, to hear his voice, to witness every small advance. Mrs. Sophia and Mr. Almeida were also constant presences, bringing warmth and hope to the room. Loro, in his portable cage, stayed on the windowsill, observing Arthur's father with unusual attention, chirping softly now and then, as if offering his own silent encouragement. Each day, Mr. Eduardo gained a little more strength. His eyes, once so opaque, now shone with increasing clarity. He began to eat small portions, move his arms more easily, and most importantly, converse. At first, they were short sentences, fragmented memories, but soon he was sharing more coherent thoughts, expressing his gratitude with a deep gaze and a squeeze of Arthur's hand. "My son, you saved me," he said one day, his voice still weak but laden with emotion. Arthur felt his heart tighten, guilt and love mingling in a torrent. "No, Father, I was the one who failed, but I promise never again." Mr. Eduardo shook his head, a sad smile on his lips. "Loro, he's an angel. He saw. He protected me." While Mr. Eduardo's body recovered, Arthur's mind was fully focused on ensuring justice. Mr. Almeida and the team of lawyers worked tirelessly. The mansion's maids, led by Maria, testified courageously, detailing Veronica's neglect and threats. Loro, in a moment that surprised even the lawyers, repeated some of Veronica's cruelest phrases, such as "useless old man" and "he won't bother anyone anymore," with an eerily precise intonation, further solidifying the evidence. Veronica's reputation, once impeccable, crumbled under the weight of the truth. The media, which had once idolized her, now portrayed her as the villain, and public pressure was immense. The most anticipated news arrived on a sunny afternoon while Arthur was at the hospital, reading to his father. Mr. Almeida called, his voice serious, but with a tone of relief. "Arthur, Veronica's lawyers tried to reach a settlement, but the evidence is overwhelming. She will be formally charged with severe neglect and elder abuse. Furthermore, all her accounts and assets have been frozen to ensure compensation for damages. She will have no way to escape responsibility. Justice is being served." Arthur closed his eyes, a deep sigh of relief escaping his lips. There was no joy in Almeida's voice, only the satisfaction of a duty fulfilled. He told the news to his father, who listened with a serene expression. "That's right, my son. No one should suffer like this. And you did what's right." Mr. Eduardo extended his hand, and Arthur held it. In that moment, Arthur felt a clarity he had never before experienced. True wealth was not power or fortune, but integrity, loyalty, and unconditional love. He had been blind, but now he saw. This was his climax, not of a grand event, but of the soul. He had rescued his father, but also himself. Looking at his father, who now smiled, and at Loro, who chirped happily from the windowsill, Arthur knew that the darkness had finally been banished. The mansion would be a true home again, full of light and love. The news of Veronica's formal indictment, with her accounts frozen and justice imminent, brought Arthur a peace he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't an euphoric peace, but the quietness of a storm finally dissipating, revealing a clear sky. He looked at his father, who now smiled, and at Loro, who chirped happily from the windowsill, and knew that the darkness had finally been banished. The mansion would be a true home again, full of light and love. In the months that followed, life at Valois Mansion transformed. Mr. Eduardo, with Arthur's tireless dedication and the specialized care his son provided, recovered surprisingly well. The East Wing, once a place of suffering, was reborn as a refuge of comfort and joy. Mrs. Sophia, with her gentle touch, chose every detail, from the light curtains that filtered the sunlight to the books that filled the shelves, creating an environment that radiated serenity. The day Mr. Eduardo finally left the hospital was one of the most emotional in Arthur's life. He was there, holding his father's hand, feeling the renewed strength in his grip. Upon arriving at the mansion, they were greeted by Mrs. Sophia, Mr. Almeida, and all the maids, whose tear-filled eyes of joy reflected Arthur's happiness. Loro, perched on Mrs. Sophia's shoulder, flew to Mr. Eduardo's shoulder, rubbing his head against his cheek. "Dad! Home! Loro! Happy!" The parrot's words, so simple yet so full of meaning, made Mr. Eduardo smile openly, tears streaming down his face. Justice, in turn, acted with the swiftness that the gravity of the case demanded. The irrefutable evidence, solidified by the testimonies of the maids and, unusually, by Loro's imitations, led to Veronica's conviction for severe neglect and elder abuse. She was sentenced to a prison term and had all her assets and accounts confiscated to compensate Mr. Eduardo for the damages suffered. The news reverberated through society, serving as a warning and proof that truth, however hidden, always finds a way to light. Arthur, now free from the veil of illusion, dedicated himself fervently to his father's full recovery and the rebuilding of his own life. He spent hours with Mr. Eduardo, talking, laughing, reliving memories. The mansion, once a stage for intrigues, became a home of laughter and affection. Mrs. Sophia and Mr. Almeida were pillars of support, and Loro, the little hero, was the beloved mascot, always ready with a witty comment that brought lightness to their days. The community, which once saw Arthur as a successful but perhaps somewhat distant businessman, now regarded him with admiration and respect. His courage in confronting the truth, his dedication to his father, and his tireless pursuit of justice inspired many. Arthur learned that true wealth was not in the figures of his fortune, but in the unbreakable bonds of his family, the loyalty of his friends, and the purity of the love that surrounded him. He had recovered his father, his family, and above all, himself. The darkness had been banished, and the light of love and truth illuminated every corner of Valois Mansion, promising a future of peace and happiness. The promise of a future of peace and happiness blossomed at Valois Mansion. The corridors, once silent, now resonated with laughter and conversations. Mr. Eduardo, full of vitality, was the center of this new atmosphere. His eyes, once shadowed, now shone with serene joy, a reflection of the love and care that surrounded him. He spent his mornings in the garden, under the sun, reading or watching the birds. Loro, on his shoulder, offered amusing comments. "Flower, pretty, Dad, happy." I chirped the parrot, making Mr. Eduardo laugh with a genuine chuckle that Arthur hadn't heard in years. Arthur had transformed. The magnate, once consumed by ambitions and blinded by illusory love, was now a man with a full heart. He rediscovered the essence of life. His meetings were shorter, decisions more thoughtful, with the wisdom of one who had learned that time is precious. He dedicated his afternoons to his father, playing chess, reminiscing about stories, or simply enjoying each other's company in silence. The guilt that had tormented him had diminished, replaced by profound gratitude and an unwavering commitment to his father's well-being. He frequently held Mr. Eduardo's hand, a simple gesture that spoke volumes about love and regret. Mrs. Sophia and Mr. Almeida remained as pillars of the house, with the elevated status of friends and confidants. Mrs. Sophia, with her maternal affection, ensured Mr. Eduardo had everything, from favorite meals to comforting conversations. Mr. Almeida, with unwavering loyalty, managed the family's affairs with dedication, but with the lightness of knowing that justice had been served. They watched Arthur and Mr. Eduardo with silent pride, witnesses to the resurrection of a family. Justice for Veronica was a closed chapter, a somber but necessary reminder that truth always prevails. Her conviction served as an epilogue to the darkness she tried to impose, and her absence was a palpable relief. The community, which followed the story, saw in Arthur not just a businessman, but an example of resilience and filial love. He received countless messages of support, and his story became an inspiring testimony to the importance of looking beyond appearances. Arthur, sitting on the terrace beside his father, watched the sunset paint the sky with shades of orange and purple. Lauro, on his shoulder, dozed. "Dad, love," whispered the parrot, almost in a dream. Arthur smiled, stroking the soft feathers. He looked at Mr. Eduardo, who smiled back, a smile of pure happiness. In that moment, Arthur understood that true wealth was not in vaults or properties, but in unbreakable bonds, in the loyalty of a bird, in sincere friendship, and above all, in the unconditional love he had almost lost. The journey had been painful, but the destination was a home full of light, truth, and a love that not even the deepest darkness could extinguish. He had found his peace, and with it, the promise of a full and happy life, alongside those who truly mattered. The promise of a full and happy life was not a mirage, but a reality Arthur built with each new dawn at Valois Mansion. Days unfolded with a serenity he had never imagined possible. Mr. Eduardo, now with his health restored and spirit renewed, was the pulsating heart of the home. His mornings were filled with strolls through the garden, where the sun caressed his wrinkled skin, and his eyes watched the blossoming flowers with childlike curiosity. Lauro, always on his shoulder, shared his morning observations. "Butterfly, flies, Dad, smiles," chirped the parrot, and Mr. Eduardo responded with a light laugh, a sound that once seemed lost forever. Arthur, seeing them, felt his chest expand with immense gratitude. He understood that true wealth was not measured in material possessions, but in precious moments, in genuine connection, and in the love that blossomed in his home. His professional life had also readjusted. Meetings were still important, but Arthur approached them with a new perspective, prioritizing ethics and the well-being of his employees, remembering that each person had their own story and their own bonds. He dedicated his afternoons to his father, not as an obligation, but as a privilege. They played chess, reminisced about family stories, or simply enjoyed the comfortable silence of each other's company. The guilt that had corroded him for so long, for his blindness to his father's pain, transformed into a driving force for care and attention. Every gesture, every word of affection was a balm for the wounds of the past. He still frequently held Mr. Eduardo's hand, a touch that spoke of love, regret, and a silent promise of the future. Mrs. Sophia and Mr. Almeida, witnesses to the entire transformation, observed with discreet pride. Mrs. Sophia, with her maternal affection, continued to look after Mr. Eduardo's comfort, preparing his favorite meals and offering soul-warming conversations. Mr. Almeida, with his unwavering loyalty, managed the family's affairs with the same dedication, but now with the lightness of one who knew that justice, though painful, had been fully served. Lauro, the little hero with vibrant feathers, was more than a pet. He was a family member, a living reminder of truth and courage. His phrases, sometimes funny, sometimes surprisingly profound, were the soundtrack to the new life in the mansion. Family. Love. Arthur. Good, he chirped one day, as Arthur stroked him, and the businessman felt a wave of warmth in his heart. Veronica's shadow had completely dissipated, leaving behind only the lesson that superficial beauty can hide the deepest darkness. The community, which had followed Arthur's saga, saw in him not just a magnate, but a man who had found the true essence of life. His story became an inspiring testimony, echoing the importance of looking beyond appearances and valuing the bonds that truly matter. One afternoon, Arthur and Mr. Eduardo sat on the terrace, the sun setting on the horizon, painting the sky with colors of hope. Lauro, on his shoulder, was alert, observing the world. "Dad, happy," said the parrot, and Arthur smiled. He looked at Mr. Eduardo, whose eyes shone with a profound peace. The journey had been arduous, filled with pain and disillusionment, but the destination was a home full of light, truth, and a love that not even the deepest darkness could extinguish. Arthur had found his peace, and with it, the promise of a full and happy life, alongside those who truly mattered, with the wisdom that the greatest and truest wealth resides in the heart.